So, do you need to move to LA or New York City to make your film dreams come true? I'm about to answer that in this video. I think you should ask yourself why you're doing this. Why are you going into film? And I think that may figure out your answers. Is this something you want to grow a following? Do you want to be a content creator? Or do you want to be a filmmaker? Do you want to be the next Martin Scorsese? Do you want to explore different avenues of visual creation? I think these are questions you should answer before you decide to move to one of these big cities, if you live in the United States. With that being said, I think one of the number one important things about these cities is the connection. When I moved out to LA about 12 years ago, I had no connections. I was looking for a community. I went to film school personally, so that gave me the connections. I went to USC. They gave me a lot of my cohort that were all into film and all this kind of stuff. So I did really enjoy the fact that I moved to a big city because it felt like endless possibilities. There was just a lot that I could accomplish in a different place than where I was. So I think also that speaks to our international audience. If you do need to leave your nest or your den, leave it. Go somewhere where you can feel inspired, motivated, where you could feel like yourself, if that makes sense. So yes, do it. So reason number one to move to a film hub is more opportunities. You'll get called for your regular videography, you'll get called for music videos, for short films, for all kinds of different video type of things. So I think that gets you the experience. So I think that's really key when you're up and coming and you're trying to do things, is just having a place where there is a lot of opportunity. But with that being said, a lot of opportunity means a lot of competition. So being in LA, there is a lot of competition. The rates are a little higher, but you're gonna kind of struggle with competing with some really high caliber people. So that is one facet, or one key element that you need to be aware of when you move to a big city. Okay, number two, networking. Networking is so much easier in these big cities. So for me, I'm part of the Latino network here, and so being Latino, I've able to find a network of other writers, directors, cinematographers, all that come from a kind of similar cultural background. So the networking has been really helpful for my career, and I could say honestly, probably the biggest thing about it is being out here is having that network. I've gotten most of my jobs from word of mouth. So being in a place where a lot of people are doing the same thing that you are, you're being a good standing community member, not being an asshole, not having an ego, will get you very far in this industry. So that's one thing I recommend, is just always having a vast network of people, of friends, good quality people that will recommend you for jobs when you need it the most. So yeah. And number three, there's an access to bigger productions. So when you're in a big city, you're gonna get it on sets that are a lot bigger than you could imagine. So a lot of these cities will have bigger budgets. You go to LA, you'll have commercials that range from anywhere from $100,000 to $1 million, and even more than that. So getting access to those productions and being on those productions really gives you a big idea of what's possible. And I think that's really important in this career, is knowing what is possible for yourself and knowing your capabilities. And so I think a bigger production will, if you do something bad, I mean, it can be very bad for you, but I think it's a learning experience. And so that being on those bigger productions, you become the small fish in the big pond rather than the big fish in a little pond, from where you're at. So I think it's really important to open your eyes and open your heart to a whole new place that can sometimes be intimidating, but it's really, really helpful. Number four is being surrounded by like-minded people. I think this is so helpful for your artist journey, is that you surround yourself with people who are in the trenches with you, who are working toward the bigger goals and holding you accountable along the way. I know that I cannot be, or I couldn't be where I wanted to be if it weren't for my friends who are in this industry with me, going through it, going through the strikes, going through all this stuff, because that community is so important. And when you live in these bigger cities, you're gonna find these bigger communities that are going through it with you, and they're gonna help you along the way, because they know that if you don't quit, you will essentially be right next to them. You know, I've been out of film school for 10 years now, probably 11 years. It's just going beyond me now, how much I've been out here for. But when you see other people that you've essentially spent these 12 years pursuing something, it's like a level of respect. So being in these big cities, you get that level of respect where you can actually like cultivate these friendships and continue to grow with a big, vast community. And then the final reason why you should move to a film hub is because there is mentorships. There is a lot of people doing what you're doing, but at even a higher level than you are. So being able to find people who are doing it at a higher level allows you to try to reach or to meet them there. So I think it's helpful when you find someone who you really trust and you just reach out to on LinkedIn or on Instagram or anything like that, and you ask for mentorship, because I think it's really helpful to have someone to just guide you along the way and hopefully not make the same mistakes that they made getting up there. I know I have a mentor in cinematography and in writing, and they've really helped me an immense amount along the way to not make mistakes, to make my writing better, to make my cinematography better. Everything benefits from having a mentor. So that's something I really, really recommend. And being in a film hub, it literally just screams that you are risking it all, if that makes sense. Staying in a small city just feels like you're not risking enough, and so that's why I would say you need to move out of your den to really, really grow, because staying in one spot just doesn't feel right. You know, we need to be expanding and connecting with so many people from all over. So yeah. But with that being said, there are some negatives. So let's talk about the negatives. A few reasons why you don't need to move is remote work has grown immensely. So if for some reason you already live in a big city and you're like, you know what, I really don't like paying so much money to live here, and you have the connections and you're maybe in a career like editing or writing, you could just do that anywhere. You could go to Mexico, you can go to abroad, given, you know, the time difference, factor that in. There's so much to do remotely now that I don't know if you necessarily need to live in a big city just to do that. So number 2, indie film. Indie film is probably on the rise to be thriving again. And cities like Austin, Atlanta, smaller cities like in Louisiana, North Carolina, Oklahoma, these are places that are smaller film hubs that are growing, and I do highly recommend all these different cities, because while they aren't necessarily like the main hubs like LA or New York, you're still getting a lot of exposure, and you're getting exposure to a lot of big films. So if you haven't noticed, LA, a lot of the films in LA and TV have been moving out of LA, which is really unfortunate for all of us who live in LA, which I hope we get some of that back. But there is opportunities elsewhere to work as locals. So I think it's important to look at the cities that are starting to grow and thrive and see if those fit with your budget. Let's talk about cost of living. I'm sure you know so much about that. I'm not gonna go too deep into this, but the cost of living is extremely high in these cities. It's hard to make it in these cities if you're not constantly working, or you have a side gig, or you have something else going. So I think it's important to think about it first, to be like, well, will I be able to sustain myself in one of these big cities? I mean, the answer is always yes, yes, yes. Always reaffirm yourself that you will, and you will be able to, but just think about it and have some backup plans for how to support yourself while you're pursuing this big dream of being a filmmaker. Number 4, If you have really great skills already and you are creating and you are making things on the daily, I think it's really important to just keep harboring that. There's so many avenues to be seen on the internet and everything. I think if you start creating and you just keep on refining your voice, these big cities will eventually call you. You'll find yourself in a way where you can communicate and pitch projects to different folks. But I do think that there is a sort of vetting process that you need to know the right people and be trusted, because it's not enough alone to have a good reel, but you also have to have someone that will vouch for you and vouch for your character. And so it's very important that you're able to meet these people. So whether it be at film festivals, if you go to Sundance, you don't necessarily need to have a film to go to a film festival, but if you are a filmmaker, you can go there and just be curious. Be someone who wants to answer or who wants to ask questions about people's films and questions about how to get into this. And so the more you start asking, the more you start building that rapport with these filmmakers that you admire, I think it becomes easier to be a filmmaker back at home. And then at some point you may be asked to move, or you may be asked to stay, and then you'll cultivate your own community where you live. If you can build your community right where you're at, that is an awesome thing to do. But ultimately, it's not up to you. Don't put that on your shoulders. I'm from Florida, and I originally wanted to build a community in Florida, but it just wasn't there. There wasn't enough money in Florida. And that's the problem, is that when governments don't give you film incentives or tax incentives, the film industry is not going to go to you. So you have to go to where the film industry is and start creating those opportunities for yourself where there is a thriving industry. And then maybe later down the line, you can go back to those cities and create more life in those cities. That's always a possibility. So don't ever write off your hometown for not being a place for filming. So yeah. So the final verdict: should you move? And I will say yes. Move to those cities. Don't waste your time where you're at. You are a big fish in a little pond. You need to be a small fish in a big pond. And move to these big cities, because they will get you the most exposure to the industry. They'll get you the network. You'll get you the opportunities. It'll really, really kickstart and motivate your life to work and to work as an artist. So move to these cities, get inspired, and move forward. Like I said, there's always opportunities in these other smaller cities that are starting to grow their film industry. I think they're very valid, and I think you can move there. But if you really want to get down into the trenches, LA, New York, Atlanta, and these other smaller cities, I mean, I don't know. I guess I could say don't move to LA right now, because things are a little bit crazy. But I do think that there's an opportunity to always find people who are working through it. And when you find people who are even in what feels like our weakest point right now, after the fires, the strikes, everything moving out of LA, I think there's a really important place where it's like, if you're willing to work and you're willing to really show how much you love this industry, you can make it, you can do it, and you can do it from wherever. But I think LA, New York, Atlanta are the three big places that you need to have your eyes set on. So that being said, I appreciate you so much. Thank you so much for watching my video. Thank you so much for spending all this time with me. And I hope this helps. I hope this helps you decide whether you want to pursue film in a different city than where you're at right now. So if this video resonated with you, please leave a like, a comment, and subscribe to my channel and help me grow. With that being said, thank you so much. I always appreciate your support. And let's keep creating with purpose and with flow, and I'll see you on the next one.